I was afflicted with a built-in boyfriend thief on the day my younger sister Diane was born. And I am not referring to borrowed clothing or innocent crushes. I'm talking about the type of theft where if I brought home a lover, she'd have him wrapped around her finger in weeks. If I introduced someone over Sunday dinner, she'd be demaying him before dessert was served. If I shared a lovely couple photo on Instagram, she may run into him at his favorite coffee shop the next day. Everyone claimed Diane acquired mom's beautiful beauty and I received dad's sharp wit. The comparison hurt, but I learned to live with it until the boyfriend stealing began. It started quietly enough in high school. Trevor, my lover, suddenly decided he wanted to study at our place every afternoon. Diane would glide by in her cheerleading uniform, begging him for assistance with her calculus homework. I didn't notice the manipulation because I trusted them both entirely. However, in retrospect, the symptoms were clearly visible. By the time we reached our 20s, Diane's tactics had become surgically precise. I dated Cameron for 6 months before inviting him to meet the family. Diane had a difficulty 1 week after that horrible meal and needed to cry on his wide shoulder at 2 a.m. They slept together the same night. Then came Marcus from my marketing firm. The same routine: family meal, fabricated emergency, and a midnight comfort session. When I discovered their sensual text conversations, she had the audacity to bend her head and smile softly. "I'm just making sure they're worthy of you, Laurel," she explained, fluttering her eyes. Marcus failed the test miserably. Deep down, I realized she had a point. If these men could quit me for my sister so easily, then they weren't my soulmates after all. But that rationale did nothing to alleviate the scorching feeling of betrayal in my chest. Then came Derek, who almost broke me. We had been dating for 2 years, seriously considering marriage after I got my nursing degree. Diane drank heavily at his birthday celebration, which I had prepared for weeks, and kissed him in front of everyone at Applebee's. When he chose her over me, she had the courage to post on Facebook. "There are times when you can't help but fall hard for someone. Sorry, not sorry. Mommed me on Thanksgiving." Her voice is as keen as a carving knife. "You need to stop parading these men in front of Diane," she screamed, stirring the gravy. "She can't resist temptation when it's right in front of her. Why do you keep setting her up for failure?" In my mind, I had not dangled anything. I tried to build meaningful relationships, but they crumbled under my sister's constant charm offensive. 3 months later, fate shone upon me at my college roommate's wedding in Chicago. That is where I met Connor. Everything I'd ever wanted wrapped up in a 6 feet 2 inches bundle. Kind, successful as a software engineer, and seemed resistant to female manipulation. For 8 glorious months, I kept him a secret from my family. We drove to adjacent towns for dates, avoided posting couple images, and I told no one about him. I believed I'd finally thwarted Diane's boyfriend stealing plot. This was the most healthy, honest connection I'd ever had. Connor spoke of our future with such confidence that I began to believe in happy endings again. But then my loose-lipped cousin Amanda accidentally mentioned Connor to Mom during a phone chat, and Mom automatically introduced him to Diane within a few hours. My sister's investigation talents were on par with those of the FBI. She found him within a few days via his company's website. Kicked out at 17 with just $12 and a trash bag. Now my family wants to live in my $750,000 home after years of silence and lies. I was 17 when my dad told me I wasn't built for success. It wasn't some heat-of-the-moment insult. He said it calmly, like he was doing me a favor. Like the sooner I accepted my place in the family, the easier life would be for all of us. "You're the spare," he said, not even looking up from his newspaper. "Your brother's the heir. You're just extra." I think that moment carved something into me. Growing up, I always felt like the background character in someone else's story. My older brother, Nathan, was the golden child, the star athlete, honor roll student, family favorite. He had a bedroom that faced the lake, a brand new car the day he turned 16, and a dad who called him champ even when he messed up. Me, I was the one who got hand-me-downs, suspicious glances, and lectures for existing too loudly. He recently split after his ex-wife detailed years of financial and emotional abuse in court files. 2 separate restraining orders have been issued against other ex-girlfriends who are currently being investigated for securities fraud. Perfect. Vincent's LinkedIn profile portrayed him as a successful entrepreneur, replete with a professional headshot that could have earned him modeling contracts. But delving deeper uncovered the truth. A clever con artist who specialized in luring ladies into financial disaster. I made a phony LinkedIn profile for a possible investor and contacted him with a business pitch. We met at a Starbucks in downtown Denver where I expertly played the sensitive elder sister character. I showed him Diane's Instagram images, raving about how she constantly stole my boyfriends because she was so attractive. I just can't compete with her, I admitted, my voice cracking with trained emotion. Every guy I've ever loved chooses her instead. Vincent's eyes brightened like a hunter spotting wounded prey. He saw precisely what I wanted him to see. A broken lady he could easily exploit with a stunning sister who offered the ultimate trophy. You seem like an incredible person, Laurel, he added, leaning across the table to grasp my hand. Any man who would abandon you for someone else is an imbecile. We started dating right away with me playing the smitten girlfriend and him laying the framework for his regular con. He showered me with lavish dinners at the Capitol Grill, weekend getaways to Aspen, and promises of a future together. However, I could see from his act that every compliment and gesture was intended to make me emotionally reliant. After 3 weeks of this deception, I told him I wanted to keep our relationship hidden from Diane since she had a habit of taking my men. Then I invited him as my date to my mother's birthday dinner at Olive Garden. Well aware of the chain reaction I was initiating, Vincent believed he was playing me, preparing himself to make me his next victim while including Diane as a bonus conquest. He had no idea he was heading into a trap that I had spent weeks crafting. Vincent delivered an outstanding performance at his mother's birthday supper. He treated Diane as if she were invisible while lavishing me with attention that seemed sincere enough to fool everyone at the table. He complimented my lasagna choice, laughed at my father's horrible jokes, and even brought Mom flowers. But Diane couldn't bear being ignored, especially by such a handsome man. She escalated just as I predicted, caressing Vincent's arm while she spoke, leaning too near when she laughed and muttering inside jokes that only he could hear. Her flirting grew so evident that even our naive parents took notice. I excused myself to the restroom, where I saw Diane move in for the kill through the slightly cracked door. My sister is sweet, but she's pretty vanilla in every way, she said, sliding her finger over Vincent's forearm. I could show you stuff she wouldn't think of trying. When I returned to the table and saw them exchanging phone numbers, I flung my glass of Merlot at Vincent's face and rushed out, crying. The performance of a lifetime, complete with mascara dripping down my cheekbones. Diane called that night, her voice filled with phony worry that did not fool me for a second. Vincent totally came on to me at dinner, she claimed. But frankly, you're better off without him. Something about him appears very sketchy. Within 2 days, she was sharing Instagram stories from his fancy condo in Cherry Creek. Within a week, she had fallen madly in love with his falsehoods. Within a month, she had moved in totally and given him access to her bank accounts for our joint expenses. I watched everything develop from the sidelines, feeling a mix of contentment and mounting unease. Diane was heading blindly into quicksand, and I had pointed her in that direction. But after years of having my heart broken by her selfishness, I couldn't bring myself to warn her of the danger she was in. The first break in Diane's idyllic new life occurred 6 weeks later when a lawyer representing Vincent's ex-wife contacted her personally. Vincent had hidden assets during the divorce procedures. Diane could now be held accountable as an accomplice to fraud. They think I might also be sued. Diane contacted me, panic creeping into her voice, but Vincent explained everything. His ex-wife is just bitter and trying to stir problems. I made supportive noises in private, knowing that this was merely the beginning. When it was revealed that Vincent's investment enterprise was an elaborate Ponzi scheme, Diane had already put her whole $30,000 funds. She was convinced she was going in on the ground floor of the next major tech startup when the SEC shut it down and her money vanished overnight. It must be a mistake, she wept during another late-night call. Vincent's attorneys are challenging it. He promises we'll receive everything back. plus interest. However, when Diane attempted to leave his condo after finding additional lies, Vincent revealed his true colors. He gripped her wrist so hard that it snapped, then locked her in the bedroom, ranting about ungrateful women who didn't appreciate anything he'd done for them. When she finally escaped and attempted to access her accounts, she discovered that he had emptied everything, including her checking, savings, and 401k. Worse, he'd stolen her personal information to apply for credit cards and loans in her name, leaving her with $80,000 in debt she had no idea about. The ultimate blow came at dawn on a Tuesday morning when FBI officers knocked down Vincent's condo door. They discovered Diane's signature on scores of fake documents that Vincent had duped her into signing, making her an unsuspecting collaborator in securities fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. The phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Diane's name appeared on the screen, but I allowed it to go to voicemail. Diane's voicemail was hardly audible between her cries. "Laurel, please. I'm in county jail and they say I might go to prison. Vincent used me for everything, and now the FBI believes I was assisting him. I know I have harmed you, but please, I implore you. I need help." I listened to it 3 times before I deleted it. Within a few days, the local news had taken up the story. A local lady has been detained as part of a multimillion-dollar fraud conspiracy. Diane's mugshot appeared on Station 7's evening broadcast. Her mascara smeared and her eyes were sunken with grief. Mom called immediately, hysterical. "You must help your sister. She made mistakes, but she did not deserve this. She made her own decisions," I responded gently, "just as she did with Cameron, Marcus, Derek, and Connor." The hush between us lasted until Mom said, "You knew, didn't you? You understood who he was." I did not respond since the truth was too complex for a simple yes or no. Had I realized Vincent would kill Diane so completely? Not precisely. Had I adequately investigated him to realize he was dangerous? Absolutely. Diane eventually pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testifying against Vincent. She spent 8 months in minimum security jail and emerged with a felony record, wrecked credit, and a restraining order prohibiting Vincent from contacting her again. The family dinners ceased. Mom couldn't look at me the same way, split between horror at what I'd done and reluctant admiration for my calculated vengeance. Dad simply shook his head whenever Diane's name was mentioned, muttering about natural consequences and chickens coming home to roost. After her release, Diane relocated across the nation to Portland, where she worked as a barista and gradually rebuilt her life. We haven't communicated in 2 years, although I do occasionally check her Instagram. She appears older and more cautious today. Her eyes have lost their arrogant, predatory sparkle and become quieter and more hesitant. Sometimes I wonder whether I went too far, if wrecking my sister's life was worth the thrill of finally winning our bizarre game. But then I recall Connor's shrug, Diane's brazen smugness, and years of watching my happiness erode for her amusement. She finally got what she had been looking for her entire life, a man she couldn't resist. She just didn't expect him to stop destroying everything she valued. I've been in therapy for a year, working through the complex feelings of planning someone's downfall, even someone who had repeatedly injured me. My therapist argues that revenge rarely offers the peace we expect, and she's correct. I do not feel triumphant or vindicated. Mostly, I feel hollow where all that rage used to reside. But I can sleep easier knowing Diane will never steal another woman's lover again. Certain lessons may only be learned via total catastrophe. And my sister learned the hard way. I thought the story was over. Diane was somewhere in Portland, and I was here living the quiet life I'd always wanted. No more family dinners layered with unspoken accusations. No more bracing myself every time I introduced someone to my family. Just calm. But sometimes too much calm feels like the ocean holding its breath. Silent, still waiting for the storm you can't see yet. One gray October afternoon, I got home from a long shift at the hospital and checked the small metal mailbox by my front steps. Wedged inside was a thick envelope. No return address, no stamp, just my name and slanted handwriting that stopped me cold. I knew that handwriting. I'd seen it on birthday cards, on sticky notes stuck to the bathroom mirror back when we lived together. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a neat stack of glossy photographs. My breath caught in my throat when I saw the first one. Me sitting at a cafe downtown. Across from me sat Connor. Not the Connor from my memories, smirking, smug, caught in my bed with my sister, but Connor now. His hair was shorter, flecked with gray at the temples. He was leaning in, listening to me intently, like we were old friends sharing secrets. Only, I had never met him since that night. I hadn't spoken a single word to him in years. The next photo was from a different angle, taken from across the street. Then another from inside the cafe, blurry but close enough to make out my hands resting on the table, his reaching toward mine. Tucked behind the photos was a single sheet of paper folded once. I unfolded it slowly, the weight of dread heavy in my chest. Did you think you were the only one who knew how to play this game? No signature, none needed. I sank into my couch, the photographs sliding into my lap. My mind was sprinting. Who had taken these? Who had known where I'd be? And why was Connor of all people back in the picture? I tried to tell myself it was some mistake. Maybe the photos were doctored. Maybe Diane had found some old pictures and edited them to look recent. But the small sharp details, the coffee cup logo, the scarf I'd bought just last winter proved otherwise. The thing was, I had been at that cafe 2 days ago, but not with Connor. I'd been there alone, reading on my laptop. The photos weren't just strange, they were impossible. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside my window made me get up and check the locks. In the morning, there was another envelope. This time, just one photo. Connor again, but now standing in my driveway. The note beneath it read, "You never really understood what he and I were capable of." I drove straight to the police station, the envelope on the passenger seat. The officer on duty glanced through the photos, his brows knitting. "Do you have any proof who's sending these?" "Just a guess," I said. My voice sounded distant in my own ears. He asked if Connor had ever threatened me in the past. I almost laughed. "No, not him. My sister." The officer gave me that slow, careful look people give when they're trying to decide if you're unstable or telling the truth. He took my statement, told me they'd look into it, and sent me home. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, morbid curiosity, maybe won out. "Laurel," the voice said. Smooth. Familiar. "Connor, I hear you've been looking at pictures of us." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles ached. "We haven't seen each other in years." A low chuckle. "That's not entirely true." The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear until the screen went black. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading up my back porch steps. Not deep, heavy work boots, smaller, a woman's. A week passed like that. Notes in my mailbox, calls that went silent when I picked up, objects in my house slightly out of place. I stopped sleeping. Every shadow felt like it had eyes. Then one Friday night, there was a knock at my door. 3 sharp knocks. When I opened it, Diane stood there. She looked different, older. Her hair was shorter, her frame thinner, her eyes wrong. They were calm, almost too calm. "You let me rot," she said simply. I didn't answer. "You think you won, Laurel? You think you gave me the man who destroyed my life?" Her voice didn't shake. "But you forgot something. You gave him me." She stepped closer, lowering her voice, and I caught the faint scent of cigarettes on her coat. "He told me everything about you." I felt my stomach drop. "What are you talking about, Vincent?" she said, a faint smile curving her lips. "That wasn't his only name. He had another one you knew very well. One you dated before I ever touched him." It hit me like ice water. Connor. The timeline reeled in my head, pieces snapping together in ways I didn't want them to. The uncanny ease with which Connor had slid into my life all those years ago. His sudden attraction to Diane. The way Vincent had known exactly how to play her. They weren't 2 separate men. They were the same man. "You set me up," Diane said, her smile now wide, almost joyful. "But you set yourself up first. He used both of us. And now..." She leaned in so close I could smell the faint trace of cigarettes on her coat. "Now, I'm going to make sure you feel what it's like to be hunted." She turned and walked away into the darkness, not looking back once. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't know where I thought I was going. Just away. Somewhere she couldn't find me. Somewhere he couldn't find me. But as I was backing out of the driveway, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A photo. Diane sitting in a cafe. Across from her, smiling like a man who had all the time in the world, was Vincent or Connor or whatever his name really was. The caption under the photo read, "Round 2. And that's when I finally understood. Our little game had never been between sisters. We'd both been pieces on his board all along. I didn't sleep after that. The photo burned in my mind. Diane leaning forward like she was confiding something. Vincent Connor watching her with that same predatory patience I remembered. His smile was small, knowing, like a man listening to music only he could hear. By morning, I was sick with it. I'd been so sure I'd been in control once, moving pieces across the board with precision. Now I saw the truth. There had never been a board. There had only been him arranging us like matching figurines in a set, taking one down whenever he was bored of the other. The worst part, I couldn't tell if Diane knew she was back under his spell, or if she was doing this for me. Some twisted payback for what I'd done to her. 3 days later, she called. No greeting, no small talk. Come to 48th and Grant. Corner booth. Alone. The line went dead. I sat in my car outside the diner for nearly 15 minutes before going in. Inside, the smell of fried eggs and burnt coffee was thick in the air. The booths were half full. Truckers, 2 old women playing cards, a young mother spooning oatmeal into a toddler's mouth. And there they were. Diane was in the corner booth, her back to the wall, one arm draped across the vinyl seat like she owned the place. Vincent Connor sat across from her, his hands folded loosely on the table. He looked straight at me when I walked in like he'd been expecting me for hours. "Laurel," he said, voice smooth as glass. "You're late." I didn't sit. "What is this?" Diane smiled faintly, tilting her head toward him. "I told you. Round 2. Vincent leaned back. "I wanted you both here together. It's only fair." I swallowed hard. "Fair? Fair," he said. "Because you think you ruined her life, and she thinks she ruined yours. But really, neither of you did. That was me. And I'm not done yet." Something inside me snapped tight. "You're a parasite." He smiled wider. "A parasite doesn't build a home inside its host. I do. I move in. I rearrange the furniture. I rewire the lights. And when I leave, the place never feels safe again." I turned to Diane. "Why are you even here? You know what he is." Her eyes flickered. Not quite fear, but not defiance either. "Because," she said softly, "he knows something about you. Something you never told me or anyone." Vincent's gaze sharpened. "Want me to tell her?" I said nothing. My throat had gone dry. "5 years ago," he said, still looking at me, "you weren't just some wrong little nurse with a sister problem. You were a girl who needed money desperately. Enough to do something illegal. Something very creative." Diane's eyes widened slightly. "What is he talking about?" Vincent leaned forward, elbows on the table. "She ran a little side business at the hospital. Medical records have value, you know. Patient data." He smiled thinly. "She sold them. Small scale, but still a felony. I know because I helped her hide the money. She just didn't know that's what I was doing." "That's not..." My voice cracked, too sharp. "You're lying," I said. He shrugged. "Maybe. But I've got the files, and I've got proof that your sister received a payment from one of those accounts. Which means if I go down, both of you do." Diane's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. "So, here's my offer," Vincent said, his voice low enough that only we could hear. "We stop pretending we're enemies. The 3 of us work together. There's a bigger game to play, and you both know you're not built for normal lives anyway." I stared at him, the clatter of dishes, the hiss of the coffee machine. It all felt distant, like sound underwater. And for one dizzy, terrifying second, I thought about it, about what it would mean to stop running and turn into the storm instead. But then I looked at Diane, and I realized she was already considering it. That was the moment I understood. This would never end unless someone ended it. I slid into the booth beside her, close enough to feel the tension radiating from her arm. I leaned in, eyes on him. "Okay," I said quietly, "but I need time to think." He smiled like a man who'd just won. We left the diner together, Diane walking a step behind me. The autumn air was sharp, the sky low and heavy. Once we were in the car, she finally spoke. "Were you really?" "No," I said, starting the engine. "But he'll make it true if he wants to. That's what he does." She looked down at her hands. "Then what now?" I didn't answer until we were halfway across town. "Now," I said, "we burn him out." 2 weeks later, Vincent was arrested in a sting operation. Not for anything we'd done, at least not directly, but for a wire fraud scheme that had nothing to do with us. I'd given an anonymous tip to the same FBI agent who'd handled Diane's case. I'd made sure the trail back to me was clean. The morning the news broke, I got one last envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No photos this time, just 7 words written in that same slanted hand I'd known my whole life. "You think this is the end?" I haven't seen Diane since. I haven't heard from him either. But some nights when I'm lying in bed and the house creaks in the wind, I swear I hear footsteps in the hallway. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe without meaning to I invited the game back in. After Vincent's arrest, the silence was almost unbearable. No calls, no messages from Diane, no signs that the storm had passed. I kept replaying everything. The betrayals, the lies, the endless circle of manipulation. Therapy helped, but the scars ran deep. I'd hoped that by cutting ties and exposing Vincent, I could finally reclaim my life. Instead, it felt like I'd only cleared the board for a new, unseen player. Months passed, and I focused on rebuilding myself. I worked extra shifts at the hospital, threw myself into my nursing career, and kept my circle small. But the paranoia lingered like a shadow. I'd catch myself glancing over my shoulder or jumping at the slightest noise. The house felt less like a refuge and more like a cage. Then, one evening, a message popped up on my phone. No number, just a text. "We both lost, but the game isn't over." My heart hammered. I didn't reply. Days later, an anonymous package arrived. Inside was a small music box, one that played a haunting melody from our childhood. Attached was a note. "Remember how it started?" I wanted to scream, to throw the box away, but a part of me couldn't let go. Was Diane behind this? Was Vincent still pulling strings from behind bars? Or was this some twisted echo of the past haunting me? I realized then that the game had changed, but it was far from finished. The music box sat on my bedside table, its eerie tune a constant reminder that nothing was truly over. I knew I had to face the ghosts of my past head-on. I reached out to Diane one last time, sending a message that simply said, "If you're still there, let's talk." Weeks passed with no response. Then, one chilly evening, my phone buzzed. A single message. "Maybe it's time to rewrite the rules." It was the first sign of hope, a chance to end the cycle of betrayal and pain. Maybe Diane and I could find a way back from the wreckage, to build something real from the ruins. For now, I don't know what the future holds. But I've learned that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones within ourselves. And sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing the game altogether.